Hello, it's me today, Dr. Abby, on Tell Me the Stories of Jesus. And thank you for joining me every week. Today we're continuing on our series about David. Today we're talking about David as the warrior. Imagine, David, the little shepherd boy. He's a warrior today. And the story is in 1 Samuel chapter 17. So the Israelites were gathered, and then the Philistines. So the Philistines on that side, the Israelites on that side. Remember, Saul was the king of Israel then, and they were gathered to battle. And David had 3 brothers. Remember, there were 8 sons, but the first 3 were in the army with King Saul on this side. The Philistines were on that side. And the Philistines had a champion. They had a giant who was like their lead. And he will come out every morning and face the Israelites and tell them, choose one of you to come and face me and fight me. And whoever wins, then that side, that country has won the battle. And every morning he will come down and he will threaten them. And the Israelites were so worried. Saul was so worried. I mean, he was a giant. He was really, really big. And they didn't think, who is going to face him? Yes, his name was Goliath. Correct, you're right. And so David, remember, he's that obedient, gentle shepherd boy. And he was with the sheep, and his father, who was growing old, called him and said, take all these and go and check on your brothers and share some, with the commander. Give this food to them, but go and check on them, make sure that they're well. So when David got there, he saw the giant. It was at the time when the giant was making his boast and shouting, and the Israelites were afraid. And David, we've learnt about him, he's quite courageous, quite bold. And then he asked one of the soldiers and said, what will be given to the man that defeats that giant? And they told him, because King Saul had gifts ready for whoever will defeat this giant. And David's oldest brother heard him asking, and he told him off. But David was not rude, but he very firmly let him know that he was just, asking questions. He wanted to know. And he asked a few people, and they gave him the same answer. So he said, you know what? I want to face him. I'm going to face him. And he told Saul. So Saul told him to come, and Saul dressed David up like me. Remember, David is only a shepherd boy. By the time they wore all these things for him, it was so heavy. David was like, sorry, King Saul, I cannot fight this battle in this whole outfit. Let me just go as I am. Something I'm used to and comfortable in. Those are my words. But he didn't want all those, the outfit. So he went as his usual self. He had a sling bag, which he usually takes when he takes the sheep, out to feed. And in the sling bag, he put 5 stones. He got the 5 stones from the brook, around the water. He put the 5 stones in it, and then he had a sling, and then he had his rod, his shepherd's rod, and he was going to Goliath. And when Goliath comes out to make a boast, he runs down the children of Israel. He speaks against their God, and David, being a child of God, after God's heart, he didn't like it at all. And as he was going towards Goliath, Goliath looked at him and thought, what an insult. You're sending this young lad to me, a homie, a big warrior, a giant. And he told David, I'm just going to kill you and just, And David, knowing how strong he was in God, he also was bold, and he answered Goliath and let him know that I am coming to you, not by myself, but in the name of the Lord. And he went towards Goliath and he said, I'm going to defeat you today. I'm going to conquer you. And he went and he was bold and he was not afraid. And Goliath, not knowing, David just brought the stone out of his sling bag. He put it on the sling he was holding, rolled it, whoosh, The stone went right to the center of the head of Goliath. And Goliath was dressed also like this. You know, he had all the armor. But God directed the stone right to where he had no covering, the center of his head, and he fell down. Whoosh! And when he fell down, David finished him. David killed him. And the children of Israel were happy. Whoa! To the battle! And they all ran down this side and they went after the Philistines. And that's how they won the battle. That's how they won that battle that day. The king was so happy. It was a great victory for Israel. David defeated big Goliath, David the young lad. Now let's learn our lesson from this story. No matter how young, how small you are, God can give you great victory as long as you look up to him. Remember our story about Gideon who thought he couldn't do anything? That same way, that was how God gave Gideon victory. The same thing he did for David. As long as you focus on God, as long as you put your trust in him. Remember, thy will be done when we did the Lord's Prayer. Thy kingdom come. It's always about God. And David was going towards Goliath and said, I'm coming to you, not in my power, but in the name of the Lord. And God gave him victory. Another lesson, when you're facing the enemy just means any adversity, anything that looks difficult, anything proving difficult against you. Don't always lay all your steps, what you're going to do, and make it obvious. David hid those stones in the sling bag. Goliath didn't know what was coming for him. That is why you always depend on God to give you that trick that you're going to use to win. God will tell you that way that you're going to study, that you're going to do so well in the exam and you are the top of the set. You know, you ask God, who would have thought a little stone would kill a giant? But David hid it. He put it in the sling bag. Don't go talking all the time. I am coming to you with my sling and my stone. No, you know, not everything has to be shared. Another lesson, David learned to use the way he was comfortable with. Don't copy others. Don't copy what others do. When you're in a challenging situation, stop and pause and ask God, what will work for me? What will make me win this battle? David put off all the heavy clothes and he went in what he was comfortable with. God will always use that thing that you are used to, that you're familiar with. Remember Moses, God said, what is in your hands? And God used the rod in his hands. Yeah? So always ask God, do what you're familiar with. Don't be a copycat. Don't do things that have not been tried and tested, except God says you should do it. So there are times when God will say, you know what, let's do this new thing. But outside of that, just stay in the center of God's will and don't be timid. Don't let anybody intimidate you. Don't let anything be a Goliath in your life. That huge thing that you're so afraid of, you become disabled. You wake up every morning, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to school again. I'm going to face those boys and girls that make fun of me. No, just ask God for the strategy and be bold and face the Goliath. In what? In the name of the Lord. And God will give you the strategy. He will give you the way to have a victory in that challenging situation. Remember, commit your ways to the Lord and he will direct your path. David conquered Goliath because he went in the name of the Lord. Until the next time, when we talk about David, today we've learnt about him as the warrior. Past, we've learnt about him as the shepherd boy. We will talk about him in another way next week. It's bye-bye from me, Dr. Abby. Bye.